Now, Arrow do point out, before they put their edit together, this is not Bruce Lee's Game of Death. That film is lost forever, because obviously Bruce isn't alive no more. So whether he would have used this footage, reshot that footage, we just don't know. And they're quite honest about it. You know, this is not like, they're calling it the final Game of Death, but not like the ultimate or Bruce Lee's Game of Death, because they're right. We'll never know what he would have used. Hello. Welcome back. And as always, I hope you're doing well. Right, today I'm going to give you my thoughts on Disc 8 in the amazing Arrow box set, Bruce Lee at Golden Harvest, the Game of Death bonus disc that features, to me, the amazing The Final Game of Death. So before I go through that, guys, before I actually describe what I think of the Game of Death, because it's over, I think, about 8 chapters, I thought I'd mention the bonus stuff that's on there first, and then I'll go through what I think about the final Game of Death. But just to give you a quick highlight of what I'm going to say, it's mind-blowing. Right, so special features on this. First off, you've got Game of Death Revisited, which was the 2000 Bruce Lee GOD done by Artport. I do think they released one in 2003 as well. So that's on there. I said in my last video it was Warrior's Journey. Sorry, John Little. It wasn't. It was the Artport. So that's quite nice to have on there as an extra. Then you've got a Super 8 bit of footage of Dan Inosanto in 1974 demonstrating single nunchaku and then some double nunchaku. Some of it looks like it's a bit speeded up, but I could be completely wrong there. But it's quite an interesting novel extra to have on there. Then you've got a brief Kareem interview from 1974, so this is 2 years after he filmed the Game of Death with Bruce, and he still looks like the same Kareem that's in there, minus the glasses obviously, so that's quite nice to have. Then you've got an extra that's not written on the box. It's called Frames of Fury, and basically it's like stray frames in between camera setups and that. Although the hands drive me up the wall, they're constantly sort of in the way of the camera. It's kind of interesting to kind of look behind and see what's going on. It's probably the most we'll ever get as a behind the scenes of the filming of the Game of Death. And there's clips of Bruce smiling in between takes, walking around, getting frustrated with himself. Fascinating, but it does get a little bit irritating. It's like very flashy and hands and clapperboards. But still, it wasn't mentioned on the description of the Arrow set. So I found that quite a nice little extra. And then obviously you've got your image galleries broken down into 4, which is basically the whole of the Unknown, you know, the Kareem stuff, whole of the Tiger with Dan Inosanto, the whole of the Dragon, Jihan J, and the New Territories. And obviously you see Dan Inosanto, Wong In-sik and Jihan J and a few others, and a little bit of Bruce as well. I mean, we've all seen them photos of Bruce out in the New Territories, and we kind of was hoping there was some footage films, and maybe there was. Maybe, I mean, these canisters turned up in LA in a garage discovered by John Little. They could be out there, but all we've got is this so far. But lovely to see, but we've seen a lot of these photos before, and that's kind of all of the extras on here. And I did have a little poke around to see if there was any Easter eggs, but I couldn't find any. This, though, documentary, and it is an amazing documentary. It's quite long though, just under 4 hours. I think it's 3 hours and 43 minutes. Now, I've watched it twice now. I think this first time I watched it, I was just sat there like, couldn't believe what I was seeing. I really took it in, and what I found is James Flower, who done this, I mean obviously Brandon Bentley, and there was another guy, sorry I forgot his name. The way they've done this documentary is, well, it's such a perfect homage to Bruce. It's breathed a bit of fresh air into the whole Game of Death project, because obviously over the years we've had obviously the 78 version, which does get mentioned in this documentary obviously, and in a way even though everyone's got mixed views on it, and my views on Game of Death have changed dramatically over the years since we've found the lost footage, you know, the John Little footage that he found. You know, my views on Game of Death, not the score, mind, by John Barry. As soon as I hear any of that, I'll always associate it to Game of Death. But there's been the Game of Death, obviously, the 1978 Bruceploitation. Then you've had the Artport 1 and 2. There's various ones on YouTube. And obviously, you've got the Game of Death Redux by Alan Canvan. That incorporates John Barry's score into his mix of it. So I'm going to go through the chapters, the 8 chapters, and sort of give you my views on what I think of them. And, yeah, we'll go from there. Right, let's get started. The final Game of Death is just that last little segment. The whole thing is the final Game of Death, but it is a documentary, and it goes right back. It's 223 minutes long, and it's a 2K restoration done in 1080p. It looks fantastic. What they've done with it is just simply out of this world. See, the problem is with some of the other mixes, whether it be the Redux and all that, they're getting their clips and footage from different sources, so it didn't all, sometimes it'd be really sharp and then sometimes it'd be soft. This is just steady all the way through. So, and obviously when John Little found the canisters, there was only 9. Well, now Arrow had access to all 11. Whether there's any more, I don't know, but they had access to even more. So you're getting all this 2 hours of unedited raw footage. So obviously, but they also had, John Little discovered Bruce's notes as well. He was changing his mind on day-to-day basis, but basically they had some sort of idea what he was going to do with this. The intro and chapter 1 is called The Rules of the Game. It's a brief intro into Bruce Lee's films, you know, Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, Enter the Dragon, and he shows you the success of the first 3 movies, and then he obviously got his own company in association with Golden Harvest, you know, Concord, which he did Way of the Dragon with, and he gives you a brief outline what he had in mind for the Game of Death in 1972. And the pagoda idea, you know, going up the pagoda idea, it came up when Bruce went to India with Sterling Silliphant, you know, the writer, and James Coburn, the actor, hunting for the project that came out as Circle of Iron, the Silent Flute. So quite a nice little, and I'm really condensing it. The narration and the way this is all put together, they're using clips out of the documentaries Bruce Lee the Legend and The Man the Legend and some of Bruce's films. And then it goes to the start of the filming of the Game of Death. So, chapter 2 is The Hall of the Unknown. Now, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was on a really limited time schedule at the time because he was playing basketball and he was really hot at the time. So they got all the filming done with Kareem over 5 days. So that is where he kills James Chen. I'm assuming you've all seen this. I'm hoping you've all seen this. But you've all seen the Game of Death, haven't you? And then obviously all the fights with Kareem and Bruce. I mean, that was all shot over 5 days. Can you imagine? Amazing. So that's chapter 2, The Hall of the Unknown. Then we go on to chapter 3, The Hall of the Tiger. This starts with James Chen and Chen Yu-wan. And he's coming up carrying the long pole. The missing log scene that we've seen photos of for years, but we never thought we'd ever see the footage. It isn't that long, but it's another piece to the puzzle. So it's all the filming with Dan Inosanto. Obviously later on you see some Dan Inosanto footage in the New Territories, but I'll get to that. And his fight with James Chen and obviously Bruce, you know, the double nunchucks, the whip, the screamer sticks. And I tell you, what I realised that people like Stanley Kubrick, and it does mention it in the documentary, they have the luxury of doing some scenes, you know, they'll do them 50 times if they need to. But the thing is, what they did in Hong Kong, because they was on a tight budget, if they got the scene right first time, they'd move on. So some scenes you'd only see once, and yet you'll see Bruce Lee doing his nunchaku and keep messing it up for perfection. He might do the scene 10 times, and you get to see this. You know, it's just like I said, some scenes you'll see just one shot of it, and others you might see 4 or 5 times. And it's great because as you see them, they're all slightly different. And if you're a Bruce Lee fan, this is golden. You see him messing it up, laughing and joking, but his focus was laser-like. I would love to have seen what Bruce was going to do with this. I mean, he may well have discarded it after Enter the Dragon. We don't know. There's still all these unknowns. It's a fascinating case study. This is one of the best I've ever seen. Considering it's Arrow, a boutique label, they've done a phenomenal job. Honestly. And this chapter ends with Fred Weintraub turning up on the set of Game of Death on the soundstage and offering Bruce Lee a role in Enter the Dragon. You know, Enter the Dragon kind of put this kibosh on this, because we all know what happened just after Enter the Dragon. Then you got chapter 4, The Hall of the Dragon. And this is obviously the Ji-hun Jae fight. So he fights James Chen, Chi Yu-wan, and obviously Bruce. So, and again, even though Bruce hadn't worked with Ji-hun Jae, you could see the timing was off. But I mean, that fight scene, the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it. My original favourite was the Dan Inosanto, then it moved to Kareem, but I'm really liking this. This fight is just phenomenal. Bruce was just moving like a cat in it, and the breakdown of this was fantastic. So that is the Hall of the Dragon. And then you've got the end game, chapter 5. Now, this is the shortest chapter on there, and basically as the plot outline of what he was going to do with the film, and basically there was just 3 notes: the big fight, the arrest, I would imagine, of the Korean boss that sent Bruce Lee and kidnapped his family, and obviously the flight, you know, maybe them flying away, getting away from it all. Now there's a discussion in it, what is at the top of the pagoda? Now there's been many interpretations what it could be. As you know, in The Silent Flute, anyone who's seen the film Circle of Iron, when Cord finally gets to the top, he opens up the book and it's a book of mirrors, so he see everything, you know. But as we know, when Bruce Lee beats Kareem, he kicks him off, walks over to the window and screams outside, and then just don't go up, it just goes down. So we have no idea. Then you've got chapter 6, which is the New Territories, and this was just shot over 2 days, I think a couple of weeks apart. So you've got Dan Inosanto, Ji-hun Jae, and Wong In-sik from Way of the Dragon. It's quite interesting. Obviously you see the stills of Bruce, and you see very small clips of Bruce walking around and all that, and you think, oh, I'd love to see some more, you know. But fascinating stuff. We don't know if he was just using it to practice martial arts out there in the New Territories, or whether they was going to incorporate some of these scenes into the movie. Again, we just don't know. Then we've got chapter 7, Game Over, and this segment is talking about the filming of Enter the Dragon, Bruce pushing his body and taking harder drugs to keep up with his lifestyle, and of course Bruce Lee's tragic death on the 20th of July 1973 at Betty Ting Pei's apartment, and all the stuff around that. And then it shows, because obviously there was a thirst for Bruce, and then it shows all of a sudden these Bruceploitation films popping up left, right and centre. And then of course Golden Harvest called Robert Klaus in to do the ultimate Bruceploitation, the 1978 version, The Game of Death. Now Klaus only used 11 minutes of Bruce Lee's 1972 footage in the film, and he completely disregarded Bruce Lee's original idea. But in a way it kept that, I mean, when you think of Bruce Lee, sure, you'll think of the white cuffs in Enter the Dragon and stuff like that, but most people think of him in the yellow jumpsuit that he wore in Game of Death. So Game of Death, the 78 version, and he explains all that in here, kept that image going all these years. Like I said, I'm probably going to have to watch Game of Death next after this, and since I've been doing these videos, I've realised since the 2000 John Little documentary, A Warrior's Journey, I've probably seen it once. Since then, I haven't watched the Game of Death for years. So it's going to be quite interesting. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it now, because I've kind of been spoilt with this. That remains to be seen. And of course, the curse of the Game of Death. You know, obviously Bruce Lee died before completing the movie. Chi Yu-wan, apparently he died when he was 32 of the same thing, cerebral edema, if that's what we all think Bruce Lee died of. Gig Young, who played in the 78 movie, killed his new wife and then shot himself. And they even mentioned Brandon, so there is that sort of cloud of mystery about this film. And a lot of the Chinese people think this because it had the word death in the title. And then you've got Chapter 8, which includes, the Arrow edit, and it's called A Life After Death. And one thing I never really thought about, I used to play video games, I haven't played them for years, but like Donkey Kong or Mario, all these you've got to go up levels. These were all probably inspired by Bruce Lee's idea of the multi-level, working your way up to the boss. I never even put that thing together before, but it's probably true. It was in 1998. 9 of the 11 rules were discovered by John Little in a storage unit in Seattle owned by Bruce Lee's family. Unreal, no one had found that before then. And like I said, a written guide of the footage. So it discusses all that, and obviously in 2000 the documentary is A Warrior's Journey and the Bruce Lee in Game of Death. Now Arrow do point out, before they put their edit together, this is not Bruce Lee's Game of Death. That film is lost forever, because obviously Bruce isn't alive no more. So whether he would have used this footage, reshot that footage, we just don't know. And they're quite honest about it. This is not like, they're calling it the final Game of Death, but not like the ultimate or Bruce Lee's Game of Death, because they're right. We'll never know what he would have used, whether he would have used any of it. So, quite honest of Arrow. And then obviously we get on to the final Game of Death, and this is the Arrow edit. And I believe Arrow's reconstruction of the footage using Golden Harvest sounds is the best we've had yet. In my opinion, it's the best we've had yet. Obviously you've got the log scenes, just a little bit longer, but all the footage looks the same, the sound effects. And I do think now with this, the final Game of Death, this full, just under 4-hour documentary, it won't surprise me if in the future there'll be new edits using this to cut up and splice into it themselves, because it's all there. The 2 hours of raw footage is all there for you to see, and every take. Simply sublime. I think this is by far the best. It starts perfectly with the Concord, at the beginning of The Way of the Dragon going into the yin and yang, which would have been, because it was Bruce Lee's company and he'd set it up after The Way of the Dragon. I thought that was a nice touch. And it starts with a new plot outline. And so you're seeing this Korean boss with photos of Bruce Lee's wife being kidnapped. And you've got a guy impersonating Bruce Lee. Now, could that have been done a little better? Maybe the back was someone with sort of Bruce Lee's hairstyle. Or, I don't know. But I really am nitpicking, because then it goes begin, and it goes into the opening credits to the Game of Death, and it's done in that 70s feel. It just looks like it was made at the same time as Way of the Dragon, Fist of Fury, Big Boss. It's just got that flavour, and it's got Joseph Ku's amazing track that was Bruce Lee the Legend, the opening song that's on there, which is all, as soon as you hear it, you think of Bruce Lee. I thought the opening credits was amazing. And then it opens up with a missing log scene. Them coming up the stairs, Chen Yuhua and James Chen with the log. And then obviously the whole 40 minutes or whatever it is. I think they've done an amazing job. It's a really close study of this thing. And even though we don't always have a spare 3 3/4 hours to spare, you can watch a little bit of this over a couple of nights. It's something I'm going to go back to from time to time. I know I am. I've watched it twice now, and I'm itching to have another go at it, because you're seeing all different ideas. It's incorporating Bruce Lee's philosophy. By comparison, the 78 version is so exploitative and nothing to do with Bruce Lee's original idea. Obviously you've got the John Barry score, I know, but you're getting 11 minutes of Bruce. And let's be honest, we loved Game of Death. I used to call it my guilty pleasure, because even though it's a little bit abysmal, the cardboard cutout and the obvious use of Bruce impersonators, the payoff was at the end. You see Bruce Lee fighting Danny DeSanto, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Ji-hun Jae. So that was the payoff. I don't know how I'm going to feel about watching Game of Death now. I really don't. I hope I still like it, but I'm worried I ain't going to like it no more. I can honestly say I can't even remember the last time I watched the full movie. I really cannot. So, this box set, Bruce Lee at Golden Harvest by Arrow, is fantastic on all different levels. The picture quality, the extras, it's amazing. It really, really is. And obviously you've got the Big Boss Mandarin cut, 10 minutes of footage we'd never even seen before. But for me, this final Game of Death documentary by James Flower, Brandon Bentley and the other guy, sorry, I can't remember who wrote it, and the way it was all put together and edited, this is the gem of this box set. It really is. It's fascinating, and it's something that I'm going to go back to quite regularly. It's mind-blowing, guys. It really is. And if you haven't seen it, come November, you can buy The Way of the Dragon. This comes as a bonus disc. It's worth paying £22 just for this. I kid you not. I kid you not. It's flawless. It's one of the best I've ever seen, and probably one of my favourite Bruce Lee documentaries now. The final Game of Death gets a 10 out of 10 from me. Well done, Arrow. Again. Sublime. Right, I know this is a long video, guys, so yes, that's my thoughts on it. And obviously then you've got your end credits going off. But absolutely amazing disc. So glad I've got it. Bruce Lee fans definitely should watch it. And I guess my next one is going to be the Game of Death. It came second in the poll, so I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. Watch this space, I guess. Right, before I go, if you like this sort of thing, give it a thumbs up, or maybe subscribe to the channel. It don't cost you anything, and it does help me out, guys. It really, really does. Hope you like the video. And now I'm going to try and put all this together and make sense of it. Have a fantastic week, guys. Much love. Thanks for watching. And I'll be back with another ramble real soon. You take care of yourselves.